It is 3:30. We'll call the Solid Waste Management Authority of the City of Crescent City in the County of Norte, State of California is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. So we'll call this meeting to order. And we're gonna open this up for public comment. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition from the chair, please give your name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Any public comment at all? Any? Richard, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Mr. Hemmingson, today I'm expressing my views as a private citizen, not as a member of the task force. Thursday night when the task force did meet, I learned 2 things that I want to call to the attention of this whole board. We were told that because of the governor, we will not be having Earth Day this year, that Kevin has to come up with some alternatives. I deeply believed, and at that meeting, Irene Tynes agreed with me, education is very important. If you don't teach people about the 3 R's, something's lacking. Then I remembered something else. Kevin told us, straight up and honestly, when I initially served on the task force, we bought some property from Mr. Hishnu. We developed the transfer station, but there's 4.5, Kevin can tell you the right number, of undeveloped property. We look at that property, someday that property will have to be developed. There is a stand of harvestable timber on that property. We all know that this agency is cash strapped. As a citizen, I want to know why we are not harvesting that timber.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Any other public comment?
Paul, Dillard County. I was hoping not to be able to even address anything today, but something happened that I need to do it. One of the things that's going on is I thought we were going to put the information on the web page for you get your agenda and all the supporting documents are supposed to be on the web page. Last time I checked yesterday was about 10 o'clock. It's not on there, and which caused me to have to scurry around and get copies of what I needed. Now, if we're going to have these meetings and you're going to be open and transparent with the public, then I expect that should be on there. The other thing is I respect that all of you have other jobs. There's only, I think, maybe 2 people that don't have a full-time job. And all of you make the sacrifice to come and sit in this panel and do your duties as City Council, Board of Supervisors, and all the other meetings. I think you're being shortchanged when you don't demand that you get the documents in time. Now, I know the county did not get the documents till yesterday morning. Now, I know Friday was a furlough day, but the waste management patterned itself after the county personnel. They should have known that. These documents need to be out there. I'm not a student of the Brown Act or the Public Records Act. That's why we have county council. But I know the agendas, according to the paper, refreshed me Saturday, that agenda is supposed to be published or put out on 3 days ahead. I would think that the documents would need to be put out 3 days ahead. You tell me how I can expect you as a taxpayer to do due diligence on all this information when you get the documents late. That's unacceptable. And it's unacceptable that you accept it. That's what's the problem. You owe it to yourself to demand that these documents are there so you can look at them at your time and not be on crunch time on Monday night when you may have something else going on. That's unreasonable. And if you don't fix that, we can't do anything on that. So that's basically where I'm at. I think the documents should be available to the public. I think the documents need to be available to you. I don't know, and maybe county council can, or waste management council can advise us of whether you can go forward when the county didn't get the documents till yesterday morning. How do you do that in 24 hours? How do you do due diligence? And if you have a question, ask the question. All you're doing is relying on what they tell you here. Unacceptable. As a taxpayer, I expect more of that. I'm extremely supportive of you guys. I'm glad you're doing this, but you got to care for yourself. Health is a self-oriented thing, and if you don't manage your time, I'm sorry. And the only other thing I would say is, the triplicate got it right. You're on the calendar of events for today. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I think it was either Wednesday or Thursday. We were all offered to respond to an email that if we wanted to have our agendas delivered to us somewhere specific on Friday, that could be done. And it's also my understanding, but we can ask council, that the 72-hour notice of an agenda doesn't have supporting documents.
Not under the Public Acts?
Right,
okay.
Which is unfortunate. And then the third, it's my understanding that the time commitment needed talking with IT is something that we haven't figured out how to reach yet.
Well, we had the records out last month.
Well, the records came out, but as far as them being on the web, that next step on, we haven't reached that far yet.
I downloaded them off the internet and had them printed last month.
Last month?
Yeah. They're on the county.
Yes, they were on the county.
They're on the
we
county's
had a link
website.
from our website, and they're loaded on the county website. As Martha said, the county, and as you said, the county office was closed on Friday. That's the impact in both cases. I did send an email to all the supervisors offering to deliver their agendas wherever they wanted it to be delivered. I used to deliver agendas to houses. I would still do that if that was convenient for the board members. So the agendas were ready, and I was ready to deliver them. I did not get that request. This is for the same reason, because the county was closed on Friday. I couldn't deliver the documents to IT to scan until Monday, and it's my understanding that they have scanned it, and they did put it up, and it was perhaps after 10 o'clock.
Well, it was after 10, yeah.
But we're trying.
Yeah, no, I'm not here castigating you. I'm here trying to just to point out a thing. I know the city got theirs Friday, and that's why I know that I knew there was a furlough day, and so I knew that was a problem. But to me, it should be on the website, and it should be. You all should have a copy by Wednesday. You know, it's just reasonable. You're too busy. I know what your schedules are, because I know I've sat in each one of your meetings where you talk about all the other meetings you go to, and so it's said, and I hope that we can get it out earlier so people have time. There's a lot of information here, and I think that we need to take time to look at it.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Chair, just on that
Yes,
same thing, we ran into that situation in the county a couple of years ago, and we pushed back that we would have the agendas Thursday afternoon. That give you all day Friday and all day Monday with the meeting being on Tuesday to actually research it. If there are items from staff or questions to staff.
Yeah, it's, the county has an IT staff, and it works a little bit better for the county. We're kind of limited on staff, and when we get a glitch like that of a furlough day and we depend on the county to do stuff, it does put us back a little bit, but we just something we'll have to deal with. Either we need to have agenda review a day early and work on that. If we know that there's a furlough day coming up, Kevin, maybe we can work around it that way.
Sure, you tell me the date that you want the agenda. If you want them on Thursdays, then we'll start everything earlier. We have adjusted, tried to adjust to this new schedule, and we already adjusted once to have the agenda review on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, and which means we'll have to do it Monday.
Right.
To have agendas published by Thursday, then we should never run into the furlough days, because your furlough days are always on Friday. But it
Let's
was
work.
really those two things that we couldn't get access to the building to get your agendas to you, or to get it to IT so they could.
Yeah, and we understood. You got the email to us in plenty of time, and so I didn't have an issue with it. I don't know if the rest of it, but thanks, Paul, for bringing that up. Any other public comment? Seeing no public, I'm going to close the public comment period then, and we're going to move on. I'm going to pull up item 6.1, which is the report from the Solid Waste Task Force. I've asked them to give us a report on their meeting. It's been a while since they've met, and I know we've been trying to put this together. There's a lot of new members, so I've asked the chair or whoever the chair designates to come up and give us a little presentation of what went on, and I would like to have that done at this time.
Yes, good day, everyone. Mary Wilson, and again, the Solid Waste Task Force met on March 22nd, the new task force, and 8 out of the 9 members were in attendance, so it was a very good attendance. We did have a tour of the transfer station, a little behind the scenes, and got to ask some questions, which was very valuable. Staff provided an overview of the roles of the task force, the legislative roles, as well as practical roles. So there was quite a discussion in regards to that. We did refer to the Public Resources Code. We've been trying to go through that. You were trying to wrap around so many different things that are in that. And basically, there was an election of a chair. I was elected the chair, and the vice chair is Karen Sanders. And at this point, I'm looking to go through the bylaws. I also went to the county offices on Friday, and it was a furlough day, so I wasn't able to get through those. And then we went on to some old business that was on the agenda. Basically, the task force had been asked by this board to look into the solid waste and recycling responsibility ordinance on rental properties. So basically, being new members, we just got some history, some background, and discussed about setting a public meeting to meet with landlords. And then at our next meeting, we'll try and get a date set to bring some answers back to the board. The second item of old business that we went into, discussed really, was the household hazardous waste element, and we just got some background data on that. And again, we're intending on setting a goal date to move through that. We did have, just because of time constraints, a limited discussion on items of concern to the task force, and we're going to be bringing that back at the next meeting. We have set our meetings to be the second Thursday of the month. And again, Jerry attended, asking us to directly give a report to this board, and was hoping that we could come up with some ideas and policies and things that you would like to see happen through the board, and that we would report back to you. So that's the summation of our meeting, and we look forward to some good fresh blood, some new volunteers, and we'll try and get into this. There's so much detail going into just taking care of garbage. It's quite an ordeal, and I hope to keep perspective on getting into the detail, as well as the issues that are confronting our community because of the solid waste in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Are you going to continue meeting at 5:30?
Yes. Thank you.
I thank you for the your whole packet. I appreciate that. But when's your next meeting? It doesn't say.
It's on the 12th of April. And it will be at the transfer station again.
Any other questions? Commissioners?
We're certainly open for input from the board as
Great.
well.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Motion?
I do have one item prior, though. I have I guess it's more of a, I could go through the recording again, but on the minutes, on item 1.1, I'd actually asked for not just an analysis of what percentage of money spent here also, but analysis of staff time spent on the grants. And I didn't see that in the report, but I recall seeing that in the minutes. So I want to make that correction to it. So it is something I'm expecting at some point in the near future as some analysis of staff time spent on grants.
Okay.
Otherwise, it says that addition, move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any public comment on the consent agenda, only on the 2 items on the consent agenda? Seeing no public comment, then I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Any comments, questions?
Just a quick comment. I thought that.
Rich.
8850 invoice for Smith & Newell was a little excessive, and I was just wondering some background about how they chose that firm and if they went out and got quotes.
Kevin, you have a answer to that? I know they're always expensive, hard to get.
Well, the primary reason that we work with Smith & Newell is that it's the same auditor that audits the county records, and since our records are so intertwined with the county records, we're pretty much locked in to work with the same auditor that the county uses. So.
Anything else? Rose, would you poll the vote, please?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Nia?
Yes.
Commissioner Finnegan?
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Hermanson?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and throw a yes in there, too. Just,
Chair McClure?
Wrong way, but yes.
Thank you.
Is that everybody?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the director's report. Includes quite a few items. Kevin?
Okay, let's see how this goes. The first 4 items are standard reports that you've seen on most agendas, so that's financial information. 2.5, sincerely, Mike, was our best attempt at answering the questions that you asked, and maybe if we're not understanding you, maybe we need to meet with you to get you the
Sure.
details you're looking for.
yeah, I'm really just, what I'm really looking for is a breakdown of how much time versus all the other things you guys do is spent on grants. That's percentage-wise. I mean, that could be an easy, I don't think that would take, probably put more work into breaking out what is actually spent here versus what is spent elsewhere.
Okay. Percent of staff time on grants versus the total
Yeah, versus their total.
personnel costs?
Versus total staff time spent. I mean, what percentage of your day is
Got
spent
it.
on grants, basically?
The information we provided is every one of these grants, we have detailed timesheets that we use for purposes of billing, so the information we provided you is based off those timesheets. So that was easily accessible information,
Okay.
but I understand your, I will email that to you, so you don't have to wait a month.
That'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. So 2.5 was our best shot at giving you the information, and I know David had asked to try to describe the things that have benefited us and the ways in which this is good for the ratepayers. 2.6 is just a brief overview on ordinances. The 2.7 is the final report, including the corrective actions that you approved at the last meeting. 2.8 is...
Kevin, could
Yeah.
we stop on 2.7, because I did have some questions
Okay.
on the recommendations. from Smith and Newell, and it appeared to me as though these were basically the same recommendations that we have been getting in the past. And I thought we had corrected some of those. I know they keep harping on this insurance, and I think we asked for some information on insurance also.
The last time we met was to review the corrective actions to be inserted into this. We still have to actually implement those corrective actions. So that's why you haven't seen change. And I have started gathering information on the possibilities for landfill insurance. So that's
Right.
one of the things we said we would do. Now we'll start to do
Okay.
that. So this is just their final report based on the feedback you gave.
Okay, because I was under the impression that some of the things have been taken care of, the depreciation and some other items.
We're hoping that those will be adequately addressed, that in this next audit, we will have reflection of those corrections. But this is last fiscal year, so this is through June 30th, so we can't, even if we do something now, it won't fix what happened last fiscal year, okay?
Okay, thank you.
2.8 is a required actuarial report that we're supposed to prepare to calculate our post-employment benefits. I'm sure you've all seen those from the city and the county. And 2.9 and 2.
I have a question about 2.8.
Go ahead.
What is, I've been reading through here, sorry. And our unfunded liability is huge. And the city paid theirs a few years ago.
All of
Paid it off, yes, they did.
Sweet.
How, do we have a plan to start paying this? It's $435,000. Or actually, it's $390,000. And we're only paying, well, it costs, I was just wondering, do we have a plan to pay that down at all?
I don't think the city paid it all. I don't think there's any possible way. You might have paid what was due for that
I'm
year.
thinking 3 years ago, we paid over $100,000.
We paid $2.5 million, and it was a very fraction.
You're right.
Fraction of what we owe.
You know, we paid most of it, though, that was owed at that time. I think we did, yes. I'll double check that.
For the,
There was a period where you paid your first installment, and then you were still going to pay on.
I thought I'll check on it.
I don't know if you heard that.
I remember we paid a lot of money.
County's liability is $30 million for post-employment benefits.
Yeah.
I don't know what the cities are.
Yeah, I'll check on this.
But I will, if I may,
Yes.
respond to the plan, such as it is. We had our first assessment done. Our amount that we were supposed to pay was $44,000, 44 or something.
Yeah, something.
We paid it the first year. The second year, we came to the end of the year, and what happened was we got a $38,000 assessment from water quality.
Oh.
So we borrowed money from the payment that we should have made to pay for that fee. So there was an immediate impact on us. And we ended up paying a marginal amount, maybe $1,000. And this year we've budgeted $11,000, which is really only about a quarter of the annual amount. So as long as we're paying less than the required annual contribution, we will continue to fall behind. And so, but I think everybody's in the same boat on this.
Right, and we had to bring that back twice this last fiscal year for,
So we're trying to pay as much as we can. This year we have a smaller payment, but it is, we've been advised that making some kind of payment is better than making no payment because you fall into a different category if you're making no payments. And one of the options is to pay as you go, and we're kind of doing that also.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. We kind of glazed over 2.6, and this, I think, maybe there's a point of confusion on this. I wanted to actually list this as an action item, and it's not. It's under Director's Report.
and that's probably my fault.
I'd like to request at the next meeting we put this on as a for discussion and possible action on amending the JPA to remove the ability for the solid waste to make ordinances without city or county approval. On top of that,
City and county.
city and county approval.
Whatever jurisdiction, I suppose that would be in.
Okay, so next agenda will be put on for discussion and possible action.
And I don't know how many, do you have an idea of how many ordinances you've passed, Kevin, or how many ordinances? Is it just a handful?
Well,
4 or 5.
virtually every rate is set by ordinance. So since 1993, every rate ordinance has been, well, the rates are set by ordinance. So all the way back to the beginning, we've been adopting ordinances that set the rates. The only programmatic ordinances that we've adopted were 4, and it was the solid waste and recycling responsibility ordinance, blight ordinance, and then there were 2 enabling ordinances that basically empowered the code enforcement officer to act on our behalf. So those were the 4 programmatic ordinances that I think is the greatest area of
Okay.
That's the
interest
greatest area
or
of
concern.
more so than-
Mr.
Are
Chair?
are those available electronic format, where you could email those to us prior to the?
Actually, the program ordinances
Yes.
are in that super binder that I gave you.
Okay, cool.
So they're in there, and because the solid waste task force just reviewed that, and they're reviewing the landlord responsibility part, I did include the main ordinance in the packet that I gave you today.
Great.
So you have a fresh copy.
So we'll have all those stuff.
Well, and I think, I don't want to overwhelm the next meeting in terms of looking at each ordinance necessarily at this point, but I would like to make.
Well, there's only 4, and we can certainly.
Well, you wanted to
take-
look at process.
The
Yeah.
process of
I
essentially.
understood that part,
Yeah.
which is why this
Yeah.
is about process, but
Well,
it was
and I
just
know
a
what the process
description.
is, I just don't agree with it, and I think that's what my
Okay.
amendment, that's what I want to have on the table for the next meeting to vote on. is-
Okay.
So I'd like a point of clarification. Do you want a legal opinion?
No, I want amendment to the JPA
I-
that basically requires any ordinance to take effect that the JPA passes has to be approved by both the city and the county before it takes effect.
I'd like to see a legal opinion on whether or not, it seems to me like it's legal for the solid waste JPA to pass them. So
Sure,
I'm
it
not
is,
sure,
and I'm not
I'm not
arguing.
sure why you want to take it off the table at this time.
Because, and as an example, well, we can discuss it at the next meeting, but an example is, last year's board didn't represent 60% of the county. My district had nobody on that board. Nobody from my district got to vote for a person on that board. So there's not representation in that effect. Whereas if this board passed an ordinance and then it required to go back to the city and the county for it to go into effect, then that would take care of that. But at least you'd have representation in that example of, I could literally vote for that person or vote to have that person removed or run against that person.
Well, let me do this. I'll put it on for discussion and action as you request. I understand your intent, and then the board can decide what they want to do and provide direction for us to take the next steps. No problem.
And I think that, I could agree with you, Mike, that by adding the language that puts it back to both the city and the county, will start to blaze our future here a little bit on how we want to deal with this. And I don't see a problem with it, because even though it does meet California Civil Code, by having the JPA, we can always go beyond the minimum requirements of the JPA. So I think that, I think in good faith, we can.
And if I may, from my perspective, if I had been smart enough to go above and beyond what was required and had some process with the city and county prior to this being adopted, I feel we would be in a better position right now to be enforcing that ordinance, because right now it's sort of in limbo, in question, and I don't feel like I have full buy-in from the city and the county, where it is really well-crafted ordinance, and it's not an issue so much of the tone or the content of the ordinance, but the process. So if we can even catch up and figure out a way to get buy-in on these ordinances, and in addition, how do we do it in the future? Because we may always have 10 members sitting here doing this, but maybe we won't. David says no. And there may also be, and we'll talk about this next at the next meeting, but I think if you can define, or if we can start talking about the JPA as a whole, and the things in the JPA that might have room for improvement or correction or strengthening, that perhaps we can pull together a longer list of things, and I talked to Jerry only briefly about this when we were doing agenda, that if you could come up with a list of things that you're concerned about or you'd like to be improved, you might be able to delegate this task to, and I'm going to volunteer Jay and Jean to work on this, and since they're sitting here, I'm not doing it in their absence at least. If you can come up with a general concepts or ideas of improvements that you want, you may be able to delegate that to the three of us, and we can come up with some overall revisions to the JPA that make sense as we move forward to the future. Of course, I'll
Add it to their other meetings.
They look like they'd be happy to.
Well, this is why they come to the meetings, to make sure nothing happens without them knowing about it, but
Okay. I'm good with.
I think that's fine. I was down to 2.9 and 2.10. I just wanted to highlight that these are, both of our main contracts have a CPI escalator, so that every year they get a % of CPI increase on their contract, which is a fairly routine process once it starts. The most important part of this is that CPI escalator basically controls the price on those two contracts. So even though the Hamburg contract's into their 5th year, their rates have been fairly stable as we've gone ahead. Their payments have been fairly stable because of the clause in our contract that limits them to a % of CPI. And similarly with the new ecology franchise agreement, even though there was a jump at the beginning of this contract, these two contracts have a built-in mechanism to keep those rates stable over time. So this is their mandated request for it. We'll come back in subsequent meetings with potential change orders to update their contracts, including the CPIs, and then the board by resolution will need to adopt the changes before the end of the fiscal year. So that's what's coming up on those.
And, okay, and we need to wait for that information to come out, what the CPI is?
Yeah, we try to give them the most recent CPI numbers that we can get, and you probably wouldn't be surprised to know CPI has not gone up. This is a consumer price index for those
Right.
people in the internet world. That it hasn't gone up very much, but it is something that we committed to in our contracts with both of these contractors.
And so those rates in Recology's instance, then that would mean that they would raise the rates to the customer, to their customers?
Yes.
And in Hambro's instance, that would be raising the rates to Solid Waste Authority?
It raises the rate, it raises the payments that they get by that percentage, and that cost is generally passed through to the customer. It's kind of a generic concept right now, but when we calculate the actual CPI, you'll be able to see that it's probably going to be in the range of.
But in that case, then the tipping fees would have to be adjusted also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that the US CPI, or what CPI is it based
I
on?
think it's all California cities. Is that what we're using, Ted?
All urban consumers.
Oh, pardon?
All urban consumers is the index we use,
State of California or
nationwide.
nationwide?
So I have a question, Kevin.
Yeah.
In Hambro's letter, when they make reference to the tsunami cleanup free, I wasn't sure if they were asking they were asking for a cap on the amount. And I'm wondering if we need to negotiate a new line in their contract that is actual catastrophic debris. You know, if we have, like, if the Hyuchi Bridge falls down, where does all that?
Yeah, can I clarify this? This originated,
But when we get it out of there.
the harbor, one of the things the harbor is doing is they're rebuilding the boat basin. And part of the contract that they just selected involves taking the old rock around the edge, it's rock and gravel around the edge, and to some extent it involves disposing of that, and then the chips of rock from when they're putting the new pilings in, because they have to sink them into bedrock, so they're going to have pieces of rock. There was some confusion that started with the contractors calling us, asking for a rate for harbor dredge. And the concern that they're trying to express is to make it clear that we are not set up to be, we have a rate in the Hamburg contract for harbor dredge. It was never intended that all the harbor dredge would be moved through the transfer station. So they're really specifically focusing on that. I don't think, Joel can correct me, but I don't think they've had a problem with the tonnage, the other tonnage, the disposal tonnage that has come through as a result of the tsunami. But you want to come up to the mic, Joel, and clarify if I'm not being clear?
Joel Wallen, Hambro, WSG. Yeah, originally when the rate was put together, it was to provide an avenue for either the harbor or residents to be able to dispose of limited quantities of soils or harbor dredge. Once the tsunamis came along, it was apparent that if that was funneled through the transfer station, it would create a huge burden, not only for us, but for the county. The cubic yards that they put out that would have to be moved if it were indeed labeled that way was in the excess of something like, it was huge, like 5,000 or 10,000 loads of material. So it's a lot.
My understanding is the actual harbor dredge, the dredge material that's taken off the bottom, the soil mixture, is going somewhere else. They have no, I'm not aware of any plans for them to think that they're going to be bringing all that harbor dredge through the transfer station. But Joel understandably is concerned that when we bid it, there's a price for that, and legally they're obliged, but it's not, doesn't seem like that's happening.
So I guess what my question is that do we need to sit down in a negotiated table with Hambro and actually identify the cap? So when someday they decided that they were bringing the dredge spoils on shore to dump, that it didn't all land in Hambro's plate. I mean, that's kind of what I read here, is that you wanted to maybe be able to set a cap on the amount that could be disposed of.
The way I recall that, I think when I submitted the letter, I talked to Kevin briefly about it, and I think we talked about it, that we would discuss it at a later date.
Okay, so that's not part of, that's part of this request?
It's really just bringing awareness.
Okay, because that's why I'm asking if we're opening the contract for that section.
I think it is something we definitely want to look at.
So we're opening. That's the request. That's part of the request, because the other request that talks about adding the CPI to transportation, we've never broken out the CPI like that before, where there's the added part of the request that because of your increase in gasoline prices, I was interpreting that you would want, that you're attempting to put the CPI onto the gas price somehow.
I think, Joel will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think specifically in this case, he's just trying to give you a heads up.
I hear that, I know the problem.
Not requesting that rate increase at this time.
That, I would agree.
They're
Okay, so you're just requesting
I think they
current CPI.
unnecessarily
Yes.
complicated this letter, which all it had to say was, we request our CPI increase. Probably would have been cleaner to have the other issues in a separate communication to you.
I did have a question on the first part of it, though. And I guess my question is what the additional costs are on the clean soil, sand, and harbor dredge. I mean, isn't it paid by ton anyway, or I'm just confused as to why?
The rate for those materials is considerably less than for the garbage rate, and the garbage rate really covers that transportation component between here and Dry Creek landfill.
I think
that's
part
the
of
majority.
challenge they have is Joel wasn't involved with preparing that bid when they put in their proposal on the transfer station, and I'm not sure if anybody there remembers why they gave us that price, but it seems to have assumed very small quantities, not. And the confusion only came, it really started with the contractors that wanted to bid on the reconstruction job because there was a bit of disposal in that. And they kept calling it harbor dredge, and then that got everybody's attention because, the 20,000 or 30,000 tons of harbor dredge just doesn't make sense to move through the transfer station to begin with. And probably most important, from their perspective, the rate that is in the contract doesn't come even close to what it would cost for them to handle it.
Thanks.
Okay. Any public comment on the director's report? Richard?
I would like to comment on 2.6. Yesterday and today, I learned something, and I think before any new ordinances are done by solid waste, there should be some communications with both the city and the county. The reason is, both the city and the county have excellent nuisance and blight ordinances, and both Eric Taylor and the county's blight officer are doing an excellent job. I learned that both the city and the county are following up on foreclosures to make sure the banks are taking care of foreclosed property. That's the way something should be. My concern, and I got this from Jamie just a little while ago, because I knew in the legal definition sometimes things need to be spelled out very clearly. Currently, 708.230, the county's language states, nothing contained in this chapter shall be considered to impose a duty upon the county or its governing bodies to take enforcement action or contact hearings on behalf of another public agency. I've seen more than once the county ask assistance of solid waste to abate county property. I've also seen something that may be duplication in this argument about the responsibility of the landlords. And the question was raised about RV parks and mobile home parks, and two people told us at that meeting, they're members of that task force, different rules apply to those kinds of establishments. If I lived in the county, and let's say Kevin blighted me, or Eric Taylor blighted me for the little stack of garbage I got in my yard right now, because my landlord makes me pay for the dumpster when I clean, I'd like an appeal process. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any other public comment on the director's report?
Yes, hello again, Mary Wilson. I'd like to first go to item 2.3, and my questions were the revenue comparisons from 2011 to 2012, and particularly the two things that I thought were quite notable. On the top half of the page on item 2.3, the increase in revenue from last year to this year, it's you know, it averages over $20,000 more a month. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, you know, coming out of our community. You know, why we need it, I still have never really got real clear answer on the why of this increase. And then when you go down to the bottom of the page, I see the franchise fee. And if you take a look on the first column, you'll see like July, 15,000, you know, was the actual annual, and then it shows the increase, $7,200. That's 50% of last year's actual income, and that's huge. I assume this is on the 10% fee that the is collected. Is my assumption of what the $15,000 is when it says for the franchise fee. But those are quite remarkable numbers, and you know, somebody somewhere is paying for all that. And the second thing I'd like to go to is on item 2.4. It's the Treasurer Controller Report for 2012, and I had a question. You know, the biggest expense, of course, is the transfer station operations, which that looks for 8 months into the year, it looks like it's reasonable. It's still pretty high, but the one that is the stood out to me is the huge expense for professional fees. So I don't really understand. I know they have $195,000 budgeted, and they've only used 46% of it at this point. But that's just $200,000 for professional fees is really high. And the third thing in regards to the report is what Mike started off with, asking in regards to the percent of time that locally is charged back for or out of the grants that come in. And the discussion was that it would be emailed to you. I'd really like to see that brought up during public comment time, because you did specifically ask for that, and we were prepared to go into that, but it's not here on this agenda. So I would hope that that can be brought up so the public can talk about that and not back and forth, so we can keep this out in the open. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
You got that running already, Ted? It's green. I mean, by God, it barely got to the podium. Anyway, I want to talk about 2.7 on the audit. I found it interesting in the audit that on page 6 that they talked about the JPA, and that either the county or city may withdraw and thereby dissolve the JPA, and the county and city would each resume their respective responsibilities for waste management issues, and that's not what I understood during the ad hoc committee. Then they're on page 18, they talk about deficiencies and certain deficiencies in internal controls, and end up with significant deficiencies, a deficiency in a combination of deficiencies in internal control that are less severe and in material weakness and are important and to merit the attention of those charged. And one of the reasons that's important is through the audit they talk about different things that they had reported on the previous year that we obviously didn't take care of. Not seeing a corrective action plan or whatever, I don't know what that stands for. Then there's issues about retired medical, and seems to be a confusion on who might have paid for that, whether the retired medical, whether the county paid for it, or whether waste management. I don't know. It's not in the. It's not in there. There was a recommendation in there on, I think, page 24 regarding training for staff and accounting on disclosure checklist. And there are just several little things in that audit that we're behind the power curve because it was June 30th. I don't know whether you addressed them or not. This first time I got a chance to read them. They are significant, but I don't understand why if we cite things in one audit that should have been corrected in the next audit, there's about 5, maybe 6 of them. I didn't count them. It just kept popping up. That's the reason why you people are here now doing this. That's the need for it. I know on audits, I've been through many state audits. It's not what they put in the report, because that's usually sanitized. It's what they tell you when they sit across the table on an exit audit. That's what's important. If they're willing to put the stuff that they did here, then I have to think that probably the other was a little more blunt. I tried, Ted. I tried to get up.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Any other questions from board member or from commissioners?
Actually, I was looking on the internet today trying to find that ad hoc committee report, and I couldn't. Does anyone know where I can find that now?
I think that's a county document.
County doc, yeah. Got an admin upstairs.
Okay.
I had a question on the reports on the. Didn't we have a past due? Wasn't there a past due schedule that was normally in all these? I didn't see it this time. Do we normally put those accounts that are past due? Aren't they usually?
Oh yeah. Thank you for asking. We had now that we have a fully integrated computerized system at the transfer station, we had our first big crash. The last 2 weeks of February, the scale system, which is linked up to the server, went down. So we had a couple weeks where we were writing hand tickets. Took us a couple weeks to catch up and entering all that data into the computer so that we could. We focused first on getting the invoices out to all the charge customers, but we don't have the data caught up so that we could provide that, what Rose calls the aging report.
Aging,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I'm sorry we don't have that, but we don't have the data up to date. We
Okay.
haven't caught up
So
on that.
it's not something that you're planning on leaving out, it was just
No,
because of
I
the
think that's
threshold.
really important for you to have that. We
Yep.
just couldn't get it done for today because we're still catching up on entering data.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to item 3.1, landfill post-closure. Kevin?
I'm sure you're thrilled to see this again.
Yeah.
We thought we had it figured out. We were going to make partial payments on this $52,000, and I think I gave you an overview, pretty good overview of
You did.
the status that we're in, which is technically we're out of compliance, but with the state board, but the regional board guy who's in charge of enforcement says that that's okay, that he won't enforce against us. I'm uncomfortable being out of compliance because it's the first time since '96 that we haven't been in compliance with every rule and law that we're supposed to be in compliance with. So rather than, and we have an application into Cal Recycle for a reduction of our post-closure liability, which requires that we be in compliance with everything. So my recommendation today is go back to what we thought we were going to do last month, which is transfer some money into that line, get it paid, but this time specifically pay it under protest, and provide direction to our staff, your staff, and attorneys to explore legal options to challenge that, because we still think it's too high, we still think we're classified wrong, but until we pay it, we don't have standing to challenge it. So my recommendation is transfer the money, approve the payment, we'll get this done, and we'll fight it.
Okay. Get a motion?
I move to pay to the State Water Resources Control Board their annual waste discharge fee under protest, and instruct staff to move forward to see what we have as far as legal opportunity
Does that include the budget
and
revision?
transfer request.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing no public comment, then I'll bring it back to the board. Back to the commission. Any comments or questions from commissioners?
I would just like to speak to my
Okay,
motion for a
Commissioner.
second. That even though Louis said that we can put it on hold, you know, if he won the lottery tomorrow and someone else came in there, we don't have that kind of documentation. So we really need to not open ourselves up to that $1,000 a day liability. And we also need to get to do this in standing, that's the only way you can protest a parking ticket in Los Angeles, is that you have to pay first. And so they've set themselves up this way, and we need to do it so we can move on. Because the next bill is going to be bigger.
Well, that brings my question is, we're going to pay it under protest, but what kind of follow-up can we anticipate from staff as to follow through with the protest?
We have about a 20-page protest that we prepared already, that we can go back and beef up and make arguments, but I think now we're going to ask that legal staff try to weigh in. Because the problem is that the same person that determines our classification and determines our rate is the same person that hears our appeal. And so we're boxed in here, and so we're going to have to probably end up reaching all the way to the State Water Resources. And that's a big one to take that jump to, so we need to be really prepared.
Any other comments, questions? Rose, would you poll the
Good
vote,
effort.
please?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving along, we have no agenda items for the collections franchise. We'll move on to item 5.1, my favorite standing item.
Yeah,
that
this
we've
is the
got.
third, I think this is the third month this has been on the agenda, and we're still trying to figure out what it is your direction wants to be. So I took a,
Just not very clear, am I?
I took a stab at recommending something so that you could decide whether that was going in the right direction, but I think Ted put together a fairly good list of alternatives for you. One thing, and this was after talking to Jerry and looking at the options that are available for businesses in general, we included a copy of a flyer that we've been using for several years, which both tells people that fluorescent tubes can't go in the garbage to inform all customers, but on the back side there's websites for mailback boxes that businesses can get. And if you look at the prices, and we did a comparative analysis on our rates in those mailback boxes, and those mailback boxes are a better deal. They're more convenient. They get mailed to you. You have them right in your business. You put the tubes inside, and when they're done, they get shipped out in a prepaid box. So one way or the other, we really want to encourage people to do that because it's a better deal. It's a more convenient outlet, and it is what some businesses are already doing. Ted, as you requested, did a survey of some existing businesses. The result of that survey is also in the staff report.
Yep.
It's a pretty detailed
Great job.
list of options.
Really
And-
happy that Home Depot, now everybody knows, and this is being streamed over.
Say it, Jerry.
That Home Depot takes your fluorescent bulbs for nothing. And they'll be very happy to hear that.
That's what they said, which is really nice for the customers and a little unfair for every other business that doesn't do it.
Okay, but let me get right to my point. We pay for the disposal of the fluorescent bulbs. Is that not correct? Solid Waste does?
That Hambro does.
Who pays Hambros?
The general rate portion
So
of their rate that they get is subsidizing the cost of the fluorescent tubes. When we bid the contract for operations, there were a certain number of hazardous materials that we knew we would want to take on a daily basis, and so we said, in exchange for getting this contract and in consideration of the fee that you're being paid, you should take these back from residents for free. So that's how we got to the residential free.
Okay, but I guess I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the cost. Well, they take them back for free, so we pay them nothing for the residential?
They take them back for free from residential, and they cover the cost due the disposal rates that they get under their contract. Not
Okay,
for
and-
fluorescents, but for garbage.
And then the rate that is paid for the businesses that recycle or that take their fluorescent bulbs out there, they pay that directly to?
We collect that fee at the gate, and then Hambro is paid for their cost of managing the business fluorescents.
So if Solid Waste Authority had one of these or several of these boxes out there that people could put those into, that would be a pretty good savings to the people that are recycling, that don't have a box. Maybe they don't have that many bulbs in their building. You know, some of these hold 50 bulbs. Maybe they only have 10 bulbs and they're replacing them, and they don't want to have a box sit around there for 5 years. But it's a considerable, the $6.44 bulb for a 4-foot bulb is way more than you pay for them. Probably 3 times what you pay for the bulb.
So you would like us to explore the option with Hambro to use the mailback boxes at the transfer station
Yeah.
for storage and
Yeah,
shipping?
I'd like to look into that.
Sure. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we shouldn't be charging, an out-of-line fee to get rid of the bulbs if we're trying to keep them out of the waste stream, which is assuming what we're trying to do. So the smaller you can keep that charge, I think the more apt you are to keep that out of the waste stream.
Joel's here.
Yeah.
Joel's
Joel, please.
the manager, so you might as well hear from him.
When we originally developed this rate that we included in with the residential garbage, we based it off 1,700 tons, I believe. 17, what's our yearly?
It's about 20,000.
20,000. So we figured it out at about 50 cents a bulb back when we originally did this. Our cost to dispose of them is 80 cents a foot. So we make just a few, it's literally just a few cents a foot in our transportation cost down to Eureka to get rid of the bulbs.
Okay, which my question to you would be, why don't you have these mailers? And then you don't have to take care of any transportation at all. And you can, rather than losing money on the process, you could.
It's a very narrow margin. If I was to figure out what the boxes actually cost, you buy those up front, so
Right.
you're out your money up front, and you're collecting the bulbs, and you send them off. So actually, I have not done an analysis to see if it would be
Right. In fairness to
much
Joel,
cheaper. Yeah.
if you're asking, we should give him
Yeah.
a chance to.
Absolutely,
analyze it.
yeah.
He's not
just-
asking for a
I'm just-
commitment right now.
Yeah, I'm just saying that $6.44 for a fluorescent, for an 8-foot fluorescent is expensive.
It is expensive to dispose of them, absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
So what happens to the broken ones?
The broken ones
Get
that,
swept up and put in the garbage?
if they break in transit, or if they break, or if they're broken when we receive them, they get bagged up and they go to the same contractor. So that is a challenge with the boxes. It does happen. But right now, we put the broken ones go the same direction as the whole one.
For bringing in a broken light bulb?
Excuse me?
What do we charge a person for bringing in a broken light bulb?
We can actually only accept a broken fluorescent tube during our household hazardous waste collection event.
Well, we got a real problem. Because 90-something% of all the bulbs out there anymore are fluorescents, right?
They're getting more and more.
It's a lot.
So you don't want us hiding them in our garbage.
Well,
don't-
if you
we're not
see the
supposed to
record,
break them.
this is the problem, and Mike pointed out correctly, this is not a good system that we have, and it's not that I'm trying to shirk responsibility, but it's a system that's broken from at a level larger than us. Everybody's struggling with the same thing.
It starts with education as to what kind of bulbs people have. Some of them aren't even aware that they're not supposed to be throwing them in their garbage, I would imagine.
There's a big
And
responsibility
then
for that.
if you think you got recycling issues with cardboard, plastic, and bottles, we certainly have one with light bulbs, and there ought to be something at the recycling there, too. That's what I'd like to see us look at.
Well, okay, in what way?
A depository for every single light bulb that is fluorescent that is not supposed to go in the waste stream, whether it's broken or not, a way for the
Okay.
client to dispose of it. When I take my garbage to the transfer station, okay, if I'm a self-hauler,
If you're a self-hauler, we'll take
what do
your
I do
tubes.
with it? If I'm not a self-hauler and I
We'll
put
take
my
'em.
garbage out,
We'll still take them. We take fluorescent lights from anybody right now. It started with a question over whether it's fair to charge businesses and not to charge residences, but we do take them. We have one of the only, if not the only place in town, but we take them right now. It's not a very good system because it's not convenient for people, and what we will continue to suggest is that product stewardship and retailers that sell fluorescent bulbs should have a role in this. The advantage of having the consumers pay at the point of purchase is only the people that are buying those products are paying the cost of disposal. The retailers that are making the money are helping to pay the cost of disposal. The manufacturers that are manufacturing are making money and have a role in helping to pay the cost of disposal. We don't make any money off fluorescent tubes, and when we take them for free, clearly we're just...
I'm looking at it as a twofold problem. One, the process, and one, the dollars. And I think you're speaking to the process, first of all. Yes, somebody can go to Home Depot with their receipt and give it to them. I wasn't aware that you had to, if you weren't a self-hauler, that you put it in a separate bag and that the garbage truck picks it up and sets it aside just like a recyclable?
No.
No? What are they
The
doing?
garbage truck doesn't collect any of these hazardous products. If you were a self-hauler and you brought it to us, then...
I thought
we
you
would
just
take it.
told me that they would pick
If
it up.
you were not a self-hauler, you could still bring them to us, but you still have to bring them to us, to the transfer station.
Yeah, there's nobody that hauls the fluorescent tubes, well, except maybe a self-hauler, which is another.
So everybody that has a fluorescent tube, even if you have curbside service, has to be a self-hauler to get rid of those, unlike they would with bottles or cans or cardboard.
Correct.
There's a long list of items that are considered hazardous waste that can't go into the recycling that Recology picks up. Batteries, paint, the sharps, so none of those can actually go into your trash.
Right.
So, and the fluorescents are categorized as that hazardous waste also. So they can't go in there. Like, you can't put a sealed up can of oil into Tommy's Recycling and expect it to get...
I understand that. I'm just thinking about, people that have paint and oil and car batteries and rechargeable batteries understand that. There's been a good enough education about that. They understand it's not supposed to go in the waste stream. Not so with light bulbs.
Right, we're still...
I could put 5 light bulbs out there, and probably 50% of the people that walk by wouldn't know whether they're fluorescent or not.
And I think that that's such a good point, because that's exactly what part of these grants that we get do, is that all of these grants have an educational component in them that allows us to do advertising, that allows us to do the educational aspect of getting people to understand what Mary said, the complexities of garbage and the complexities of garbage in California.
And I guess I don't want to delay any more time here on this. Maybe we can take a look at it. Jerry was, if I got paint and car batteries, I'm going to save it up for once every 6 months when you have your hazardous household waste rodeo or whatever. But I'm not going to do that with my light bulbs, quite honestly. I'm going to have them in a bag. They're going to get broken.
That's why the goal is to get
And
the
if you want
salesperson
maximum
to do that.
convenience, when your fluorescent tube or your compact fluorescent breaks and you go to the store to buy a new one, you should be able to take it back to that store, put it in a box, because you have to go to the store anyway. That's absolute best possible program we could steer toward, and it may take some time to get there, but I understand the Board of Supervisors in your legislative agenda have taken a position supporting product stewardship. It's a forward-thinking, long-term solution that we need to work toward, and it's a better system, it's more convenient, and it's more equitable in that the customers pay the cost versus all the ratepayers subsidizing the cost of the free stuff that we provide right now.
Kevin,
Go ahead.
if I can ask, in your report, you provided policy alternatives. The last policy alternative has to do with supporting statewide legislation for extended producer responsibility and take-back. Do you know of any legislation that's being floated at this point in time?
There has been in the past. In fact, this board has taken positions supporting statewide legislation for product stewardship on fluorescent bulbs. I think there is a bill in the works right now, but I don't have enough details, and before I ask the board to take a position, I don't ask you to take a generic position to support any bill that might come up. If there's a bill that seems like it would work, I will bring that to the board for your consideration, and if the board takes a position to support it, then we would be in a position to write letters in support. But frankly, our impact on legislation is larger because of our affiliation with the California Product Stewardship Council and 126 other cities and counties that we're working with. And fluorescent lamps, fluorescent light bulbs, and needles are on the top of our list of things to be addressed on a statewide level. Everybody has the same issue.
The only other question I had was the boxes that you use for fluorescent tubes. Are there boxes also available for the little light bulbs?
For the
There are. They have both kinds of
compact
boxes.
fluorescents?
4 foot, we have 4 foot.
You're talking about the
bigger screw-in
compact.
ones,
Okay,
compact
good.
ones,
I was hoping, because I
or
think
8
that's a
foot.
lot of what you're seeing in the waste stream, are just the littler bulbs. So, okay, thank
But
you.
you can take them to Home Depot.
Well, and
Don't charge anything.
the incandescent bulbs are not considered.
Well, that's where I'm
needles.
buying all my bulbs
I
from
know,
now
Jerry,
on.
I love that. Well, and now, there's 2 ways to go on this. That's back to older technology. Because the manufacturers of fluorescent lights, fluorescent lamps, are recognizing that they're producing a product that is creating a hazard and damage to the environment when this isn't handled, their research is steering them toward LEDs. New technology that doesn't involve the mercury vapors and the phosphorus. So the manufacturers will respond to public demand if we help them get the right signals. If they don't have any role or responsibility, and we keep struggling every year to try to have the best, cheapest, easiest way to deal with these tubes, then it will always be our responsibility. And I think when these products are banned, I think local government has an opportunity to push back a little bit and say, you can't just continue to dump all these products on us, because if we want to save ratepayers money, then we need to get out of the business of subsidizing these products that continue to come through the pipeline and start looking at more sustainable long-term options, including retail-based take-back. We gave you information on what they're doing in San Luis Obispo, where you have this power. This group right now has the power to adopt a local ordinance to say, if you sell it, you take it back. San Luis Obispo, they have what, 122 locations in the county that take back fluorescent lamps, and they take it as part of their business. The businesses that sell them take them back, and the government helps to make that work and helps to get it set up, but it's part of the product stream, part of the consumer stream in the chain of product that doesn't directly dump all the cost of this on local government, because all these things are adding up to the point that we just can't afford. We can't afford even to fail in the way that we're failing right now, much less afford to do this in a way that we're going to absolutely succeed and make it convenient, easy, and cheap for everybody. We'll try our best and we'll follow your direction, but I'll continue to remind you that that's what we think is the long-term strategy for us, is to look at producer responsibility and retail-based take-back for some of these products. I just think it's a better long-term strategy.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment? Richard?
This is one issue that Kevin explained to us Thursday night that actually floored all of us. Because the way I see the problem, you have the state telling us that we have unfunded mandates, that we have to take care of X. And the funded mandates, sometimes that money doesn't filter its way down to our level. Yesterday, when I spoke to the county blight officer, he explained to me that there's been a solution all along, if you people have the courage to do it. One of them is lobbying our legislature to change some of these unfunded mandates, whether it's when the city goes to its meetings or when David holds his meetings. The other solution, and this is my personal feeling, this authority needs to start charging user fees on material that is costing the Solid Waste Authority extra money, because this is kind of like a millstone around your neck in your budget, because no money's coming in to pay for this stuff. Once a year, or maybe twice a year, we have this roundup that takes this stuff. Those people make money on that roundup. Something has to be done. It's not fair for your average user to have to subsidize all this hazardous waste.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Andy Larson, the county. In just listening to the scenario, it almost sounds like David's question, unless you make garbage or light bulbs worth something, not everybody's going to bring it back. But what Kevin said, and I shudder to think of putting more on businesses because they're just going to charge the consumer. But if you can walk back in with the light bulbs to the place you bought it, a lot of people won't. Your point, if you've got to go to any extreme, you're going to bust a light bulb before you take it to the dump and throw it in the garbage. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of citizens would. But if you can take it back and there's an incentive to take them back, even a busted bulb, to where you're going to go buy another one, at least you're going to keep it out of the garbage. Sad to think you've got to have an incentive, and I hate to think that business, anytime you put an expense on a business, they're going to go back to the consumer. But if everybody's having to buy a light bulb, then they've got an incentive to take it back.
And you know, in the ordinances that they do have, the incentive for the business is that the person that's bringing them back, like if I'm bringing back 5 and I'm only buying 3, they only take back 3. So they get to, they're only going to take back what they sell. So that's a really good exchange.
They built in the incentive
And
to
that's
cost
built,
the light bulb.
yeah, and so that's built into most ordinances that put a buyback there. That it's, so you just can't willy-nilly take it in and make a burden on a business and not.
I can't take a broken one back and get cash for it?
Right, but you can, if the ordinance is written as such, then it requires that the person only gets back, can only take back what they're gonna buy forward.
But maybe that's something you need to look at. You know, pop bottles weren't worth anything until they made a deposit on them, and then everybody and their brother wanted to take them back if there's a reason to do it with a redemption.
Right.
Aluminum cans.
And so this is a long way thinking. You know,
Right.
that's the type of strategy we need to look at.
And that's exactly what we've had to do, is play that kind of catch-up, because what happens is we just get noticed that, you know, well, the refrigerator that you used to throw in at the landfill is no longer accepted at the landfill. So then the local government has to scramble to figure out what to do. And so this is just another example of one more thing, but it's not a bad thing to be pulled out of the waste stream, because we really don't want our workers exposed to the mercury, and, you know, we want them to be safe.
I just,
And our land, yeah.
the take-back program that would go back to ACE or back to a merchant that sells these things, I don't know. I don't know about you. I can't find my receipts from yesterday. They don't require receipts?
I don't think you have to have a receipt.
So
They don't
even if
require
it's-
receipts, they require you to buy more.
Okay.
There's
That
many
makes sense.
different ways to write ordinances. San Luis Obispo does not require what you just said, Martha. And that has created some complications where some stores seem to be getting more than they're actually selling. So there's lots of considerations in drafting a good local ordinance, but those are details that could be worked out if the board decided to consider that option.
Does anybody want to take any action? Because I'm pretty sure I could put this on every agenda,
It's on page 3.
and we could spend a lot more time on it.
I'm kind of liking it.
I mean, it's just part of the deal. At least we're getting the
Let's
message
shed
out.
some light on this subject.
Exactly. Okay, since we're not going to take any action, yep.
Basically, right now in the market, that there are companies that are coming online that are being recommended by Stansberry advisor to invest in, because the private industry is coming up with businesses that will take back computers, and that the free market really has been coming along now and trying to fill a niche and make money off of it. And so in the future, they will, private companies will step up to this. I mean, they're being recommended now to invest in long-term because of this issue. But what we have to, you know, keep an eye out in is also the when you go to the business seminars, the lights of the future as well, the transformers won't be on the end of a bulb. They're going to be in the fixture, so that you won't be having to throw out that little transformer that creates so much hazard. So the industry is changing. And so my caution to this board is moving ahead and trying to, you know, fix everything legislatively and, you know, push things back onto the businesses to take back stuff. There's always unintended consequences, and I would lean towards the free market system to, you know, jump in and be able to capitalize on this, and because there's a cost to businesses. You know, there's, especially in big cities where they pay an exorbitant amount of rental space per foot, and they need to take back in product and store product that they're not making any money on. Somebody's paying for that again, you know, so you have to be really careful I know some of the intentions are very good, but there are a lot of unintended consequences for everyone to take into mind. It sounds great, we want to have someone else take care of it and someone else to pay for it, but there's problems that go along with that. So those are my points. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're not going to take any action on this item. We're going to move on to 5.2.
Oh, seriously?
Seriously. I'm not saying we're not bringing it back on the next agenda, but
I thought you wanted us to negotiate with Hambro to explore the boxes.
yes. I thought we already talked about that. Directing staff, yes. You asked that question earlier, and I said,
You said it, and I'm taking it really seriously. Everybody else agree that's a good idea?
good idea.
Bob your heads? Okay, fine.
Okay. Okay, discussion of possible action regarding approval to sign an agreement with Sharp Solution for transportation of disposable sharps.
It's going to give me a break on this one, and pay attention to the guy on that side.
Okay, so this is a follow-up to a discussion we had last meeting regarding sharps, and we have 4 recommendations in front of you. First, confirm that the local enforcement agent, that the authority will be allowed to store sharps in the permanent household hazardous waste building at the Del Norte County Transfer Station as a home-generated sharps consolidation point, and that we be granted a written approval to hold sharps for at least 6 months. That's a very important first step. Second, prepare and submit an application including the application fee of $25 so the authority staff will be allowed to collect sharps under a limited quantity hauler exemption. 3, approve the execution and signatures on the attached agreement with Sharps Solution for an amount not to exceed $3,600 annually, and invoice each agency that is responsible for a drop-off point for home-generated sharps for sharps collection and consolidation services rendered. So essentially, if you approve all of those recommendations, the Solid Waste Authority staff will be in the role of going out and collecting sharps from Sharps Consolidation Point. At this point, there are 2 that will be developed in addition to the transfer station at the Del Norte Healthcare District and, the Open Door Clinic and the Senior Center. And so as those Sharps consolidation containers become full, we'll collect them, we'll bring them in the transfer station, and then when we have enough containers to make it worthwhile, then Sharps Solutions will come and collect those and give us empties. So I think this is a fairly cost-effective program, and very grateful to our partners with the Del Norte Healthcare District that has contributed $1,000 for paying for those services. I have received preliminary concurrence with the local enforcement agent that he thinks it's very likely, 1, that he will be the one to issue the, to authorize us as a Sharps consolidation point, and 2, he doesn't see any problem with us being able to hold the sharps for at least 6 months. And since that is a pretty critical piece, I did want to do that preliminary investigation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ted. Any questions from commissioners?
So right now, what is the process right now of sharps collection? Right now?
At this point, the only place people can bring sharps is the Del Norte County Transfer Station.
So it's self-haul right now?
It's self-haul in the FDA-approved sharps containers, which is just honestly not as convenient as we would like it to be.
Seems like deja vu to me. I thought we talked about this at the Board of Supervisors, and we talked about the Wellness Center, we talked about the Health Department.
This is making it happen.
So moved.
This is put, okay, I have a motion.
Well, I'll have a second, but I want to make a comment.
Okay.
There's a couple of things that I think we need to really get out there, and which I only found out this weekend, is that at the feed store, you can buy great big containers to store sharps in that will hold a lot of them. Because as I've been talking to people about this process, I'm finding people referring to, I've got a couple of mud buckets at home in my closet that are full of these because I've had nowhere to get rid of them. So I'm hoping that people pay attention, understand that out at the feed, it's the feed store out on, the one here on
Crescent Hay and Feed on Elk Valley Road.
And they have great big ones for people to buy, which would be really helpful for people who have been storing them, because there's been no place for people, because they've been just buying those little $4 ones. And if you're a diabetic that's taking 2 or 3 shots a day, that fills up fast. So I think that people need to know that it's, go to the feed store and buy the great big industrial size one. And I think that we need to be prepared that we may get a ton of these really fast. Not literally a ton, but we may get a lot in a real quick hurry.
I hope we do.
I do too.
That's something that needs to really come
I
out
hope
of the
we do.
waste stream.
And for anybody that's watching this, in addition to that, we have a list of all the other stores that are selling them. I was pleased a couple weeks ago when I went shopping to see who was selling the Sharps containers that most of the stores that we would that are pharmacies or that are selling Sharps products are at least carrying the red containers, so people have that option available. And Martha's correct that the Crescent Hand feed has
8 months ago,
veterinary-sized.
That wasn't happening.
Yeah.
They weren't even carrying the containers.
A horse has a
We
little
have
bigger syringe.
taken-
And I think you're all.
All your cows.
I don't know. Maybe I even included the copy of the story, but as we started moving into this, and this is partially funded, the advertising at least is funded by the grant that we've been talking about the last couple of meetings, that we knew that there were problems, and we knew there were problems generically. But as we started talking about whether anybody locally has been stuck with a needle, then Jordan called me after our last board meeting and said, I've got a guy who just got a needle stuck through his finger last week. And so now we've got, you know, for me, it just creates a level of urgency that we need to do better. We've been hesitant to promote the transfer station as the only drop-off site because up to this point, Hambra's been eating the cost of taking these needles. It's not one of the things that was originally in their contract, and it cost them about $800 last year to take the needles without any advertising. Before we did advertising and started taking them back, we needed to make sure that we were clear. We're transitioning that cost off their back and onto ours. As a public agency, we need to figure this out, and as our contractor, they're not obligated to pay the cost of the needles. So this is a shift in a couple different ways. It's a better system, it's a better price, it's a better contractor. We're taking on the cost of doing this, but if the paint stewardship program rolls out the way that we hope it will in the fall, we could be saving more than this money that we're spending on needles. We could be saving on our paint program, because in the paint stewardship program, they will take paint away for free when we've been paying for it through our hazardous waste rodeo roundup.
Great. Public comment.
I say doggy, I say doggy.
Richard.
Well, for me, this is a personal problem because I'm a diabetic. I have a little closet where I have little red boxes that need to be taken to the wellness center the next time I have an appointment. And I got a whole bunch of soda bottles with needles in it. But something occurred the last time I changed the company that supplies me with my test strips, my solution, and my meter. They are supplying me with a box, a mailer that I can mail through the post office. I got to figure out a way how my postmaster will accept this box to ship away. But I think it's important to educate people. In the past, when I've been assisting the county around some of its public buildings, I have found needles. We know that blood diseases can be passed if somebody gets stuck with a hypodermic needle. So it's not only a hazardous waste, it's a health issue.
Thank you, Richard. Any other public comment? Seeing no other public comment, then I'm going to bring it back to the commission.
I do have a couple.
Okay.
So the Sharps aren't included. They're explicitly not included in the contract, the collections contract, I should say. Is it outside of that or the hauling
They're
contract?
not included with the Recology collection contract, and they're not included with the Hambro transfer station operations contract.
Okay. And then what's the plan on the schedule of pickups? Is it once a week, or how often is staff going to be doing
Whenever
it?
they get full.
Well, at this point, we only have 2 additional drop-off locations. As Ted pointed out, the Open Door Clinic and the Senior Center have said if we can get this together, that they would consider doing this. And the process would be when they get it filled up with the small red boxes go into the 38-gallon container. When that gets full, they call us, we swap it out for an empty one. So it's an on-call service.
Okay. And then we're going to be okay with staffing ones, because I know when we looked at staffing before, there was always an issue about not having enough staff to keep the transfer station operation going.
Yeah, we still have staffing issues, but we need to do something about this, and at least initially, it's not going to be, I mean, how long does it take to drive to the Senior Center and back? It's not going to be a huge time sink. Long-term, I'd love to see a better system, because I think there's Stericycle as a company has a strong monopoly for collection, and a lot of businesses are doing that. I know that Hambro's expressed an interest in expanding their involvement to get involved with the larger permits necessary for collecting. This doesn't really provide a service for clinics, for example, or Ron Sandler. I went to Rotary last week, and Ron Sandler asked if, if this would work for him. And this is really for the consolidation of household quantities, not so much for businesses. So even for the larger community, I mean, we're pursuing this, and so far everybody who's bought in to help is considering the larger public good, because this is not, there are some things the market will not take care of. You know, we have friends. We have friends that are crazed, radical, zero-waste environmental people, and they just think this EPR is a crazy idea because there's stuff you can make out of things. And, well, when you get to needles, there's not. There really isn't a market. There's no business that's going to somehow take these needles and make a product that will make money for them. The businesses that are starting in the hazardous waste field are going to make money because local government will pay them to take care of it, and we want to not be able to do that as much. So there's a lot of room for improvement, but, and again, San Luis Obispo, Santa Cruz, other cities, other counties have taken the position that if you sell needle products, you should have needle take-back. And this service level resonates with the people. Again, when I was at Rotary last week, Scott Feller said, well, doesn't it make sense that if you're selling that, you should take the boxes back at the pharmacy, because it doesn't get any easier than that. So the customers get that, and the customers even understand that if you're going to get that service, you'll pay something at the pharmacy for them to be able to take that back, but it's a level of convenience. The customer always pays. Whether the customer is paying a garbage fee and we're using it to subsidize this, whether the customer is paying when they purchase a product and that part of that purchase price covers the retailer and the manufacturer being responsible. Either way, no matter what, every time, no matter how you fund something, the customers, the ratepayers, the taxpayers pay. So we should try to look at the most convenient, the most efficient system that we can look at. And for us, it continues to steer toward consideration of product stewardship, product take-back. Again, on needles, there is statewide legislation that's being considered because Senator Simidian passed a bill a couple years, or promoted, and it got passed a bill a couple years ago that required pharmaceutical companies to prepare a plan for what are they going to do to take back needles. But it was written so poorly that it didn't really require that they do anything, and so their plans have been pretty much, well, we're going to tell people they should be careful with them when they're done. Not really a plan to do anything, but and no solution that's going to help us. So again, here's another product that's banned from disposal. At the minimum, our obligation is to look in the garbage when it comes in and make sure these needles are not in there. That's the minimal level we have to be responsive for. But socially, the healthcare district, the senior center, the open door clinic, maybe the county health department would recognize there's a social crisis, a public health crisis, and a social obligation to make steps toward improvement on this, because when you start getting workers stuck with needles and God knows what they're going to contract down the line, there's a need for improvement.
Okay, I believe I had a motion and a second. Is that correct?
It was Dave, and who seconded?
Martha, I think. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Okay, Rose, would you poll the vote, please, on this?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner Finnegan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Okay, 5.3, along the same lines, I personally thought that this was appropriate as an urgency item, seeing as how that we had a person get stuck with a needle. That seems to be urgency enough to me, but I think...
What was used to decide the rate on this? At $75 per?
$75 per container is our exact cost that we pay to Sharp Solutions. We just took the price per container, passed it straight through. And the only people that we're charging this to at this point is the healthcare district for the ones that we're collecting from the open door clinic. It's just a way to recover our actual costs. So I thought about, you know, we need money, you know that. We need to cover our costs. But we're not going to, this is just too important for the $5 or $10 per container we could make off of it. So it's just a pass-through.
Your sentence answered my question. You're good. They answered it. I'm perfect with that.
I should stop after that.
Good.
Say yes, thank you.
That's what the cost is.
Good. Any
Okay.
other questions?
Questions from commissioners? Public comment? Motion?
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2012-01.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions?
Just a point of clarification that people need to understand that this ordinance, because it's an urgency ordinance, will not kick into the 90 days. Is that correct? Or the 60 days? Because we're declaring it an urgency.
Effective date of this ordinance would be the 31st day after its final adoption.
Right, so
That's what it
we don't
says.
read in title only.
Right.
Okay, just making clarification.
Okay, so we have a motion. Any other questions, comments?
Disturbing thing is 60% of these sharps that are sold in Del Norte County, nobody knows where the heck they go.
They're in these closets in these mud buckets.
Richard just told you where they were in his pop bottles.
Yeah, well, that's actually a little reassuring, to be honest. That people know they shouldn't put them in the garbage, but they didn't know what to do. And that was the same thing that was happening with batteries. Is people were just stocking them up, wondering what to do with them. I was afraid that they were all going off into the garbage, and we just weren't seeing them.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else from commissioners? Rose, would you poll the vote, please?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall?
Yes.
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Who did we miss?
Aye.
Murray?
Yeah.
Rose, you missed
Oh,
something. That was
Chair, Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 6.2, budget revision.
We're in the last month. This grant expires the end of this month, the end of April, I should say. And because the contractor, the California Product Stewardship Council contract, had some money that they're not going to use for different tasks that they were assigned to work on, we are transferring money out of their contract to help provide additional reimbursement for staff time for the remaining month, because this outreach and the work we're doing on the sharps right now is very labor intensive. So this is an extra $72.54 that will help to pay for staff time. And then the second part of this budget transfer is we didn't, when we set this original budget up, we didn't have a line for printing, so we wanted to at least create a line for printing in case we need to print more brochures before the end of the April.
Okay. Motion?
Move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Public comment. Seeing no public comment, then bring it back. Comments, questions from commissioners? Rose, would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Ania?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
I got everything.
Did we get
Passes.
everybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, 6.3, this was an item that I put on. Discussion possible action regarding the development of a strategic plan for financial stability or sustainability. With all these things that we need to fund, our post-closure liability, GASB 45, and with the waste stream diminishing, even though the rates are up, I think we need to have some sort of an analysis. If it's okay with everyone, I would just like to direct staff to work on analysis of the waste stream that's coming in, and have an analysis done on how that waste stream is declining, and even with the rate increases, so that we have a model of what we're looking at. I think Ted's maybe already been working a little bit on this, so I'd like to bring that into play and see how we're going to do all the recommendations that Smith and Newell has outlined for us, whether that's looking into insurance and all these things that we need to fund that aren't funded at this particular time, so that we have some sort of outlook on the future. So it wasn't really anything that I was looking for a motion, just consensus that that's a direction that staff.
Well, instead of directing staff to do everything, I think being an inclusive, a great job for the task force to be included in this also. Bring that back to us and let us have that discussion.
Because I think one of the things when I looked at the revenue chart that we got, the spreadsheet, what it doesn't tell me, it does tell me the cash component, but it doesn't tell me what the tonnage is going across the scales.
Right.
So if these have gone up, it can mask what the situation is with.
Exactly, and the task force really doesn't have access to that information, David. This would.
Oh, I know, and I was suggesting that perhaps staff share it with them and let them digest it, regurgitate it, and spit it at us.
Okay.
That's don't have to spit
Sorry,
it,
but be a little bit too.
They could just throw it
I
at
would
us.
like it to be packaged.
Can we put it in a container?
We'll put it in my packet. Yes.
Well, let me, because I think there was actually a pretty good editorial in SAC B on March 23rd, actually talking about the city of Sacramento running into all kinds of problem on their garbage collection service. That they're looking at all kinds of different scenarios as to bring it down, and even possibly looking at it at this point. I would encourage people to read the editorial. It was in the SAC B on the 23rd, or 27th, excuse me. No, 23rd. It was the 23rd. But a couple things looking at the transportation flow. If we're going to have to cut some costs, if our expenses continue to go up, which looks like the case, and our waste is going to go down, we're going to have to take a look at, do we need recycling collected every week? Maybe it's every 2 weeks. These are not new ideas. These came out of the SAC B. Also looking at the transfer station flow, what days are heaviest and what days are light, and looking at possibly amending the service.
I'd just like to get my recycling picked up.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do think we need to price out, and I haven't seen it come across before, is because we do not have a reserve right now, I think we need to price out what that commercial real estate property behind the transfer site would actually, if we sold it. Because right at this point, the only thing that we really need to hang on at this particular juncture right now is the transfer station, because we have a loan against it. But otherwise, that's possible revenue that could be set aside to build the reserve up. And I'm not sure exactly why. I've looked at the resource recovery theory. I don't know how it flies, business model-wise. I haven't seen any profitable ones. I mean, it could be off, but the time I have, it is it is an asset we have, and I think we need to price it. And I don't think that hurts anything, knowing what it actually may not be the appropriate time. Of course, I'd defer to the real estate expert in the room, but it may not be the appropriate time. But at least let's put a dollar figure to it, so at least we know what's there in case we did have to liquidate an asset. For example, if there's a liability with the landfill.
Well, I think this, it goes along with the same plan that we're trying to reduce rates rather than to raise the rates to the consumer.
Should I come back? Well, first of all, next month and the next 2 months, we'll be talking about budget.
Exactly, and
so it's a good time to be talking about these things in general. And let me encourage you all, if you have brainstorm ideas, I mean, it really is the time, like Mike just did, to throw whatever ideas you have on the table, and let's look at it. I agree. I mean, that property, commercial property is probably worth about $50,000 an acre, Mike, so it's
And
5
maybe
usable
this is,
acres.
maybe this is ideas that we could get the task force maybe to give staff their ideas, and maybe information would be better than throwing it throwing it at them and then them throwing it back at us. We just have a mess going both directions.
It occurs to me that the strategic planning could be a lengthy process. Is that something we want to do as a part of a regular meeting, or do you see us pulling that out?
Well, I think we just need, first of all, we need some analysis on the waste flow.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's the right, I mean, Jerry and I were just talking, and he was expressing his concern, and I made up a phrase, put it on the agenda.
It worked.
Which gets us to this point. I don't think it's a strategic plan, but having a plan, having a strategy, having an awareness, having options. I mean, I actually would like, and I'm happy to talk to the task force about this as well, but I really think it's useful for you, because you ultimately have to bite the bullet as far as deciding what assets we have. I mean, if we could find a way to generate some revenue off the 160 acres the county owns where the landfill sits, for example, I mean, we should really step back and look at all the possible assets that we have, whether developing that 5 acres on a regular ongoing lease basis would be the smartest, best long-term thing, or whether selling it and getting the cash now would be the best thing. Those are judgment calls, not so much laying out options. But
yeah, and I think that's the thing we need to have, as many options as possible. I mean, we're going to have to weed through this. This isn't going to be something that we're going to.
But I'll try to bring some focus ideas back, including your the analysis you asked me about.
And if Mike could email that letter, I got an opportunity to read it on Saturday as well, and it caught my eye because it was basically from the headline was directed at the city council, either you fix it or we're going to vote you out of office and we'll get the next guys to fix it. And it was a strategy of it's broken, where you're going to end up with a bunch of self-haulers and making no money, and this is ways you can do it. And granted, it was an editorial, but it caught my eye, and I'd like to see everybody, including staff, see it, including the task force.
Yeah, March 27th, I think, is what the date is on it. But
Okay.
it's titled City.
So you have enough direction?
Costly trash collection.
Yes.
Okay. Richard, quickly, if you got an idea or something, give it to us. I don't want to hear a long story about how many pop bottles full of
Not
sharps you
about
got.
pot bottles, Mr. Hemmingson.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a suggestion, because I think my suggestion that we do have property that is just sitting there, and it does have trees, and you could cut down the trees, because if you ever want to develop this property, lease it or do anything, one of the things that I'd like to suggest, and you're going to say, why the hell is he saying this? There's a gentleman who works for both the city and the county. He is the director of the tri-agency. I've heard him say that he has a hard time bringing businesses here looking at commercial property. That area is zoned light industry and commercial.
Manufacturing.
Huh?
Manufacturing.
Manufacturing?
Yeah, the 5 acres is C4.
C4 right next to manufacturing. It's not light commercial, it's heavy commercial.
Okay. Because one of the things that impressed me from the gentleman from Ambrose, they are looking into using our wet garbage to see if the possibility of composting could occur in Del Norte County. I think in the past, Tommy Sparrow, until he got his hand slapped, proved that there's enough material that makes it possible for composting, because he took a load somewhere. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And I would ask you to bring that up. You're on the solid waste task force, so bring those ideas to them, and we'll spread them all around. Thank you. Any other public comment?
We're going to spread around the compost, is that what you're saying?
You heard it here first. Closed session. We're going to go into closed session. Is that correct? Any public comment on closed session items? Are we expected to report anything out from closed session?
No, I don't think we'll have any final action to
Okay.
report.
We may not have any action to report, but you never know, so you may want to hang around or not. It's up to you.